Jake Morrison stood at the entrance of the Galactic University, staring at the massive crystal buildings that stretched into the purple sky. The buildings looked like giant gems, catching the light from 3 different suns. He had never seen anything like it back on Earth, that he was the first human ever accepted into this famous school. The university was on a peaceful planet called Kepler 442b, far away from his home. Students from many different alien species came here to study. Jake felt both excited and nervous as he walked through the main gates. The other students stopped what they were doing to stare at him. Jake tried to smile and wave, but this seemed to make them more scared. A group of bug-like aliens, called Zentari, quickly moved away from him. Their shells made clicking sounds as they hurried past. Some floating gas creatures called Valens actually turned invisible and floated away as fast as they could. Jake had read about these different species before coming here. The Zentari were known for being very smart, but also very careful. The Valens were peaceful beings who never hurt anyone. There were also tall, thin aliens called Thraxions, who taught many of the classes. As Jake walked to his first class, he noticed that other students whispered to each other when they saw him. He could not understand their languages, but he could tell they were talking about him. Some pointed at his muscles. Others looked at his teeth when he smiled. A few even seemed scared of his height. Jake was not very tall for a human. He was just average height back on Earth. But here, he was taller than most of the other students. His human body also looked very different. While the other aliens were thin or soft, Jake looked strong and solid. His first class was about studying alien animals. The teacher was Professor Kickstall, an old Thraxian with 4 eyes and long, thin arms. When Jake walked into the classroom, Professor Kickstall stopped talking. All 4 of his eyes focused on Jake. "You must be the human student," Professor Kickstall said. His voice came through a small device that changed his words into English. "Please take a seat in the back row." Jake noticed that the back row was separated from the other students by a clear wall. He wondered why, but he did not want to cause trouble on his first day. He sat down behind the wall and listened to the lesson. The class was about peaceful animals from different planets. Professor Kickstall showed pictures of cute, fluffy creatures that ate plants. He talked about small flying animals that made pretty sounds. All the animals looked very gentle and harmless. Jake raised his hand to ask a question. Professor Kickstall looked nervous, but pointed to him. "Professor, will we learn about Earth animals too?" Jake asked. The classroom became very quiet. All the students turned to look at Jake. Professor Kickstall's 4 eyes became very wide. He made a sound that the translator could not change into words. "Earth animals are not part of our curriculum," Professor Kickstall said after a long pause. "They are considered too dangerous for academic study." Jake laughed because he thought this was a joke. Back on Earth, he had grown up with dogs and cats. His sister had a pet snake. His grandmother fed birds in her backyard. None of these seemed dangerous to him. "But Professor, many Earth animals are very peaceful," Jake said. "My sister has a pet snake that is very gentle." Several students made frightened sounds. One Zentari student's shell closed completely. Professor Kickstall looked like he might faint. "Mr. Morrison," Professor Kickstall said, his voice shaking, "please do not mention Earth predators in my classroom. Even discussing them can cause panic." Jake was confused. He did not understand why everyone was so scared. On Earth, people lived with animals every day. Children played with dogs in parks. Families had cats that slept on their beds. People went camping and saw wild animals all the time. After class, Jake tried to talk to other students, but whenever he got close, they would find reasons to leave. The Zentari students would suddenly remember important meetings. The Valens would become invisible. Even the friendly plant-like students called Florians would turn their leaves away from him. Jake felt lonely and confused. He had come to this university to learn and make friends, but everyone seemed afraid of him. He did not understand what he had done wrong. That evening, Jake sat alone in his room. He looked out the window at the strange purple sky. He missed his family back on Earth. He missed his dog, Buddy, who always greeted him when he came home. He missed the sounds of birds singing in the morning. He decided to send a message to his sister, Katie, back on Earth. Using the university's communication system, he called home. "Jake," Katie said when she saw his face on the screen. "How is alien school?" "It's strange, Katie," Jake said. "Everyone here is afraid of me. They think Earth animals are dangerous. They won't even let me talk about Rosie." Rosie was Katie's pet ball python. She was a gentle snake who liked to curl up in warm places. Katie had raised her from a baby. "That's silly," Katie said. "Rosie wouldn't hurt anyone. She's the sweetest snake in the world." "I know," Jake said. "But when I mentioned that you had a pet snake, the whole class panicked. The teacher looked like he was going to call security." Katie laughed. "Maybe they've never seen a snake before. You should show them a picture of Rosie. Then they'll see how cute she is." Jake thought this was a good idea. If his classmates could see how gentle and harmless Rosie was, maybe they would not be so afraid of Earth animals. Maybe they would understand that not everything from Earth was dangerous. "That's perfect, Katie," Jake said. "I have a presentation project coming up. I'll show them Rosie and explain how peaceful she is." "Great," Katie said. "I'll send you lots of pictures and videos. Rosie just shed her skin yesterday, so she looks extra pretty." After talking to his sister, Jake felt much better. He had a plan to help his classmates understand Earth animals. He would show them that Earth creatures could be gentle and kind, just like the animals from their own planets. Jake spent the rest of the evening planning his presentation. He would use the university's holographic system to show Rosie moving and behaving naturally. His classmates would see that she was not scary at all. They would learn that Earth animals could be friends, not enemies. Jake fell asleep feeling hopeful about his presentation. He had no idea that his simple plan would change everything at the Galactic University. He did not know that his innocent presentation would cause the biggest panic in the school's history. He certainly did not know that his harmless pet snake would be classified as a weapon of mass destruction by the end of the week. Jake spent 3 days preparing for his presentation. He wanted everything to be perfect. His sister Katie had sent him dozens of videos of Rosie, their pet ball python. The videos showed Rosie eating, sleeping, and moving around her tank. In every video, she looked calm and peaceful. Jake practiced his speech many times. He wanted to explain that Earth animals were not dangerous monsters. He wanted to show his classmates that humans and animals could be friends. Most importantly, he wanted to help everyone understand that Rosie was one of the gentlest creatures on Earth. The day of the presentation arrived. Jake walked into Professor Kickstall's classroom, carrying a data chip with all of Rosie's videos. The classroom was full of students from different species. There were Xantari with their shiny shells, Valens, floating like colorful clouds, and tall Thraxians with their long arms. "Today we continue our study of peaceful ecosystems," Professor Kickstall announced. "Each student will present an animal from their home planet. We will learn how different species live together in harmony." Jake watched as other students gave their presentations. A Xantari student showed a small, fluffy creature that looked like a cotton ball with tiny legs. It ate flower petals and made soft humming sounds. A Valen student presented a floating jellyfish-like animal that cleaned the air by eating dust particles. All the animals were small, gentle, and clearly harmless. They had big eyes, soft fur, or pretty colors. They moved slowly and seemed to spend most of their time eating plants or sleeping. "Mr. Morrison," Professor Kickstall called. "You may present now." Jake stood up and walked to the front of the classroom. He connected his data chip to the holographic projector. A machine was amazing technology that could create three-dimensional images that looked completely real. "I want to show you one of Earth's most misunderstood animals," Jake said with a smile. "This is my sister's pet snake, Rosie. She's a ball python, and she's one of the gentlest creatures you'll ever meet." Jake pressed the button to start the projection. The holographic image of Rosie appeared in the center of the classroom. She was about 4 feet long, with beautiful brown and gold patterns on her skin. The hologram was so real that it looked like Rosie was actually in the room. The reaction was immediate and terrifying, as Centauri students screamed and activated their emergency shell protocols. Their shells snapped shut with loud clicking sounds. Several of them rolled into tight balls and started spinning toward the exits. The Valens completely panicked. They began separating into individual gas molecules, trying to escape through the air vents. The classroom filled with colorful mist as they dispersed in all directions. 3 Thraxian students fainted immediately. Their long bodies collapsed onto the floor with loud thuds. Other Thraxians began running toward the emergency exits, their thin arms waving in the air. The plant-like Florian students turned completely black and closed all their leaves. They looked like they were playing dead. Some of them actually buried themselves in the soil of their portable planters. Professor Kickstall's reaction was the most dramatic of all. His 4 eyes rolled back in his head, and he made a sound like a fire alarm. He pressed a large red button on his desk, and emergency lights began flashing throughout the classroom. "Deactivate the weapon," Professor Kickstall screamed. "Security alert. Predator in classroom. Evacuate immediately." Jake stood frozen in shock. He looked at the holographic image of Rosie, who was peacefully moving around, just like she did in Katie's room back home. She was not doing anything scary. She was just being a normal snake. Loud sirens began blaring throughout the university. Emergency doors slammed shut, trapping everyone inside. Robotic voices announced, "Containment protocol activated. All students remain in position. Dangerous predator detected." "Professor, it's just a hologram," Jake shouted over the noise. "She's not real. She's just a projection." But Professor Kickstall was not listening. He was speaking rapidly into his communication device, using words that Jake's translator could not understand. Jake caught phrases like extinction event and planetary threat and call the military. Jake quickly turned off the holographic projector. Rosie's image disappeared instantly, but the panic did not stop. Students were still screaming and trying to escape. The emergency alarms continued to blare. Security officers burst through the doors. They were wearing full combat armor and carrying weapons that Jake had never seen before. They pointed their weapons at Jake and shouted commands in different alien languages. "Surrender the biological weapon," one security officer yelled. "Where is the predator? There is no predator," Jake shouted back. "It was just a hologram of my sister's pet snake." The security officers looked confused. They scanned the room with their weapons, searching for Rosie. When they found nothing, they became even more agitated. "The human is lying," Professor Kickstall said, his voice still shaking. "I saw the creature with my own eyes. It was enormous. It had killing fangs and hunting coils." Jake stared at Professor Kickstall in disbelief. Rosie was not enormous. She was actually small for a ball python. She had no fangs, just tiny teeth for gripping food. She had never hurt anyone in her entire life. "Professor, ball pythons are completely harmless," Jake said, trying to stay calm. "They're popular pets on Earth. Children handle them all the time." This statement made everything worse. Several students who had been calming down started panicking again. The idea that human children played with creatures like Rosie was too terrifying for them to accept. "The human admits to child endangerment," shouted one security officer. "Their species allows infants to interact with apex predators." "No, no, no," Jake said desperately. "You don't understand. Ball pythons are safe. They're gentle. They eat mice and sleep most of the day." The mention of Rosie's diet caused another wave of panic. To the aliens, a creature that could swallow prey whole was the ultimate nightmare. They could not imagine anything more terrifying than an animal that ate other animals. More security officers arrived. They were followed by medical teams and emergency response units. The classroom became crowded with aliens wearing protective gear and carrying scanning equipment. Jake found himself surrounded by armed guards. They were treating him like he was a dangerous criminal who had brought a weapon to school. He tried to explain that Rosie was gentle and harmless, but nobody would listen. "Mr. Morrison," said a new voice. Jake turned to see a tall, crystalline alien entering the classroom. This was Dean Vorthik, the head of the university. "You are under arrest for bringing a Class XI extinction-level predator into an academic environment." "Class 12? Jake repeated. "What does that mean?" "It means," Dean Vorthik said slowly, "that your pet is classified as a planet-killing weapon by the Galactic Council. Species that dangerous are banned from every civilized world in the galaxy." Jake felt his heart sink. He had only wanted to show his classmates that Earth animals could be gentle and friendly. Instead, he had caused the biggest disaster in the university's history. As the security officers led him away, Jake looked back at the chaos in the classroom. Students were still crying and shaking. Professor Kixtal was being treated by medical staff. The emergency alarms continued to wail. Jake realized that his simple presentation had revealed a terrifying truth. The galaxy was not just afraid of humans. They were absolutely terrified of the creatures that humans considered normal and safe. He began to understand that this was about much more than just one snake. This was about the fundamental difference between Earth and every other planet in the galaxy. What humans saw as harmless pets, the rest of the universe saw as unstoppable killing machines. Jake was in much bigger trouble than he had ever imagined. Jake sat in a small room with no windows. The walls were made of some kind of metal that hummed quietly. He had been waiting for hours, and nobody would tell him what was happening. Security guards stood outside the door, and he could hear them, talking in worried voices. Finally, the door opened. Dean Vorthak entered, followed by several other important-looking aliens. Jake recognized Professor Kixtal among them, though the professor looked much paler than usual and kept glancing nervously at Jake. "Mr. Morrison," Dean Vorthik said, sitting down across from Jake. "Do you understand the seriousness of what happened today?" "I showed a hologram of my sister's pet snake," Jake said. "I don't understand why everyone is so upset." Dean Vorthik made a sound like grinding rocks. "Your sister's pet snake is classified as a Class XI extinction-level predator. Do you know what that means?" Jake shook his head. "No, sir." "On Earth, ball pythons are considered beginner pets. They're recommended for children because they're so gentle and easy to care for." The aliens in the room exchanged looks of horror. One of them, a blue-skinned alien with 6 arms, activated a holographic display. The display showed pictures of various Earth animals alongside threat-level ratings. "Mr. Morrison," the blue alien said, "I am Dr. Nelix from the Galactic Council's Dangerous Species Division. Let me explain what we know about your planet's wildlife." The first image was of Rosie, Jake's sister's ball python. Next to her picture was a long list of frightening descriptions. "Your harmless pet snake, Doctor," Nelix continued, "can dislocate its jaw joints to swallow prey larger than its own head. It has heat-sensing organs that can detect the body temperature of victims from several meters away. It can strike faster than most creatures can react. But Rosie is gentle, Jake protested. She's never hurt anyone. The creature can survive. For months without food, Dr. Nelix continued, ignoring Jake's protests. It can squeeze with enough force to crush the bones of creatures twice its size. Its scales provide natural armor against most forms of attack. Jake stared at the display. They were describing Rosie as if she were some kind of monster. But everything they said was technically true. Ball pythons could unhinge their jaws to eat large prey. They did have heat sensors. They could go without food for a long time. The problem was that the aliens were describing normal snake biology as if it were military weaponry. Dr. Nelix, Jake said carefully, these are just normal features of Earth snakes. They're not weapons. They're just how snakes evolved to survive. Dr. Nelix's 6 arms trembled as she changed the display. Now it showed pictures of common Earth. Pets, dogs, cats, and hamsters. Your domestic animals are equally terrifying, Dr. Nelix said. These dogs are pack hunters with bite forces strong enough to crush the skulls of most galactic species. They can track prey across vast distances, using scent alone. The next image showed a house cat. These cats are stealth predators with retractable claws, night vision, and reflexes faster than our military defense systems. They can leap several times their own body length and land silently. Jake looked at the picture of the cat. It was just a normal orange tabby, probably sitting in someone's living room. But the aliens were describing it like it was an assassin. Even your smallest mammals are dangerous, Dr. Nelix continued. The display showed a hamster. This creature can chew through materials that would stop most galactic tools. It can reproduce rapidly and survive in almost any environment. Jake realized that the aliens were not wrong about the abilities of Earth animals. Dogs really were pack hunters with powerful jaws. Cats really were incredible predators. Hamsters really could chew through almost anything. But on Earth, these were just normal animals. Children played with dogs every day. Cats slept on people's beds. Hamsters lived in cages in bedrooms. Dr. Nelix, Jake said slowly, what you're describing sounds scary, but these animals live with humans peacefully. They're not dangerous to us. That's exactly what makes humans so terrifying, Dean Vothek said. You coexist with creatures that could destroy entire civilizations. You keep them as companions. You let your children play with them. Jake began to understand something important. The aliens were not just afraid of Earth's animals. They were afraid of humans because humans lived with these animals every day without fear. Let me show you something else, Dr. Nelix said. The display changed to show Earth's wild animals. There were pictures of bears, wolves, sharks, and eagles. These are your planet's wild predators, Dr. Nelix said. Each one could single-handedly conquer most inhabited worlds, and humans encounter them regularly without panic. Jake looked at the pictures. He had seen bears at national parks. He had gone swimming in oceans where sharks lived. He had watched eagles soar overhead during camping trips. None of these experiences had seemed particularly dangerous to him. Humans go camping in areas where these predators live, Dr. Nelix continued. They swim in waters inhabited by creatures that could swallow them whole. They hike through forests where massive carnivores hunt. We take precautions, Jake said. We store food properly when camping. We don't swim alone in dangerous waters. We make noise when hiking, so we don't surprise wild animals. The aliens stared at Jake in amazement. The idea that humans could take simple precautions and then safely coexist with deadly predators was beyond their comprehension. Mr. Morrison. Professor Kickstall said quietly, on most worlds, a single predator species dominates the entire planet. That predator usually eliminates all other large life forms. Your planet has hundreds of different predator species, all living in the same ecosystems. Jake thought about this. Earth did have a lot of different predators. There were land predators, like wolves and bears. There were sea predators like sharks and whales. There were flying predators like eagles and hawks. And they all lived in the same areas. How do humans survive? Asked another alien in the room. How does your species exist? Alongside so many threats? Jake considered this question. We learned to be smart, he said finally. We learned which animals were dangerous and which were safe. We learned how to avoid conflicts with predators. We learned to use tools and work together. But you also learned to domesticate the predators, Dr. Nellick said. You turned wolves into dogs. You turned wild cats into house cats. You took dangerous animals and made them into companions. Jake nodded. Yes, over thousands of years, we selectively bred certain animals to be gentle and friendly. We turned predators into pets. The room fell silent. The aliens were processing this information. To them, the idea of deliberately changing dangerous predators into companion animals was both fascinating and terrifying. Mr. Morrison, Bean Vorthik said finally, you have given us much to think about. Your species is clearly more remarkable than we initially understood. Does this mean I can stay at the university? Jake asked hopefully. Dean Vorthik was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Morrison, I think the galaxy needs to learn more about humans and Earth. But we cannot allow you to continue bringing images of Earth predators into classrooms. I understand, Jake said. I won't show any more animal pictures. Actually, Dr. Nellick said, we have a different idea. We want you to teach us about Earth's ecosystem. We want to understand how humans coexist with so many dangerous species. This knowledge could be valuable for the entire galaxy. Jake felt excited. This was what he had hoped for when he first came to the university. He wanted to help aliens understand that Earth was not just a planet of monsters. It was a planet where intelligence and cooperation had learned to work with nature, not against it. I would be honored to teach you about Earth, Jake said. But as he said this, Jake realized that he would need to be very careful. If the aliens thought a ball python was a weapon of mass destruction, what would they think about the animals that humans actually considered dangerous? Jake decided not to mention bears, sharks, or poisonous snakes just yet. He would start with the gentle animals and work his way up slowly. Very slowly. 3 weeks later, Jake stood in front of the largest lecture hall at the Galactic University. Word had spread throughout the galaxy about the human who lived with deadly predators. Scientists, researchers, and government officials from dozens of worlds had come to hear him speak. The auditorium was packed with aliens of every species Jake had ever seen, plus many he had never encountered before. There were floating jellyfish-like creatures, rock-based beings that looked like walking mountains, and tiny insect-like aliens that traveled in swarms. Most importantly, everyone was sitting behind thick protective barriers. The university had installed emergency containment fields around the stage where Jake stood. Emergency evacuation routes were clearly marked, and security teams were stationed at every exit. Jake looked out at the nervous audience. He could see Professor Kick Stahl in the front row, still looking pale but genuinely curious. Dean Vorthik sat near the back, his crystalline form reflecting the lights. Dr. Nellick occupied an entire section with her monitoring equipment. Thank you all for coming, Jake began. I know many of you are afraid of me and my planet. I understand why, but I want to help you understand something important about Earth and humans. Jake activated the holographic display behind him. Instead of showing animals, it showed pictures of human cities, parks, and neighborhoods. I want to start with something that might shock you, Jake said. Humans do not live in fortified bunkers. We do not hide from our planet's predators. We live in open cities, with gardens and parks where wild animals can come and go freely. The audience made worried sounds. Jake showed images of suburban neighborhoods with trees and grass. To the aliens, these looked like humans deliberately leaving themselves vulnerable to attack. In human cities, we share our space with hundreds of different species, Jake continued. Birds nest in our trees. Small mammals live in our gardens. Insects fly through our homes. We see this as normal and pleasant. Jake showed a picture of children playing in a park while squirrels ran around nearby. The audience gasped. To them, squirrels were classified as aggressive territorial animals with sharp claws and powerful jaws. Human children play outside every day, Jake said. They are not afraid of the animals around them. They are taught to respect animals, not to fear them. Dr. Nullix raised one of her 6 arms. Mr. Morrison, how do humans protect their young from all these predators? We teach them, Jake said simply. We teach children which animals are safe to approach and which to avoid. We teach them to be gentle with small animals and to give space to larger ones. Education is our primary defense. The audience was quiet, trying to process this information. The idea that humans use knowledge instead of weapons to coexist with dangerous animals was a new concept for most of them. Jake changed the display to show images of pet stores and animal shelters. Humans also form partnerships with animals. We provide food, shelter, and medical care. In return, animals provide companionship, protection, and assistance with work. He showed pictures of guide dogs helping blind people, cats controlling rodent populations, and horses helping with transportation. The aliens watched in amazement as humans and animals worked together peacefully. But how do you know the animals won't turn on you? Asked a Thraxian researcher. How do you trust creatures that could kill you? Jake smiled. The same way you trust each other. Through understanding, respect, and consistent behavior. Most animals are predictable if you learn to read their signals. Jake spent the next hour explaining animal behavior basics. He showed how dogs wagged their tails when happy, how cats purred when content, and how horses moved their ears to show their mood. The aliens were fascinated by the idea that humans could communicate with other species. The key, Jake said, is that humans learn to see animals as individuals, not as threats. Each animal has its own personality, its own needs, and its own way of communicating. A Zentari student raised her claw. But what about the really dangerous animals? The ones that even humans fear? Jake paused. This was the question he had been dreading. He knew that eventually someone would ask about Earth's apex predators. Well, Jake said carefully, there are some animals that humans treat with extra respect. But even with these animals, we have learned to coexist. He showed images of national parks and wildlife preserves. Humans set aside large areas of land where dangerous animals can live safely. We visit these areas, but we follow strict rules to avoid conflicts. The display showed people watching bears from a safe distance, observing sharks from boats, and photographing lions from vehicles. The aliens were amazed that humans voluntarily went to places where deadly predators lived. You seek out the dangerous. Animals? Asked a floating Valen, his gaseous form flickering with confusion. We find them beautiful and interesting, Jake said. Many humans enjoy watching wild animals in their natural habitats. We call it wildlife viewing or ecotourism. The concept that humans consider deadly predators to be beautiful and interesting was almost too much for the aliens to comprehend. Several had to activate their emergency breathing apparatus. Jake decided to share something even more shocking. Many humans dedicate their lives to protecting dangerous animals. We have people called wildlife biologists who study predators up close. We have conservationists who work to save endangered predators from extinction. The audience was silent, For a long moment, the idea that humans would risk their lives to protect the very creatures that could kill them was beyond their understanding. Dr. Nelix finally spoke. Mr. Morrison, are you saying that humans deliberately preserve dangerous species instead of eliminating them? Yes, Jake said. We believe that every species has value. Even dangerous predators play important roles in their ecosystems. Without predators, plant-eating animals would overpopulate and destroy their habitats. Jake showed images of healthy ecosystems with balanced populations of predators and prey. He explained how removing predators often led to environmental disasters. Humans learn that we are part of nature, not separate from it, Jake said. We survive by working with natural systems, not by destroying them. Professor Kickstall stood up slowly. Mr. Morrison, this is remarkable. Most species survive by eliminating their competitors. Humans survive by protecting their competitors. That's right, Jake said. We learned that cooperation is stronger than violence. Competition. We learned that intelligence combined with respect for nature is the best survival strategy. The lecture continued for another hour. Jake explained concepts that were completely foreign to most galactic species. Wildlife rehabilitation, animal conservation, symbiotic relationships, and ecosystem management. By the end of the lecture, the aliens were looking at Jake with a mixture of admiration and terror. They were beginning to understand that humans were not just survivors of a dangerous world. They were active participants in maintaining that dangerous world. Mr. Morrison, Dean Vorthik said as the lecture ended, you have given us much to consider. Your species is clearly more sophisticated than we initially believed. Thank you, Jake said. I hope this helps the galaxy understand that humans are not monsters. We are simply adapted to a very complex world. But as Jake left the stage, he noticed the worried expressions on many faces in the audience. He realized that his explanation might have made the aliens more afraid of humans, not less. If humans were smart enough to live peacefully with deadly predators, what did that say about human intelligence? If humans were strong enough to coexist with creatures that could kill them, what did that say about human capabilities? Jake had wanted to show that humans were peaceful and cooperative, but he had accidentally revealed that humans were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Not because they were violent, but because they were incredibly good at surviving in impossible situations. The galaxy was about to reassess everything it thought it knew about the species from their death world, called Earth. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison first showed his classmates a hologram of his sister's pet snake. Now, he was the most famous student in the galaxy. His lectures were broadcast to universities on hundreds of worlds. Alien governments sent their top scientists to study his research. Jake had become something he never expected, the galaxy's leading expert on human-animal relationships. His small dorm room was filled with awards and honors from scientific organizations across the galaxy. But more importantly, he had begun to change how aliens thought about Earth and humanity. Today was Jake's biggest lecture yet. The Grand Assembly of the Galactic Council had invited him to speak to representatives from every member world. Thousands of aliens filled the massive auditorium, while millions more watched the broadcast from their home planets. Jake stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of different species. He had learned to recognize the signs of fear and curiosity in dozens of different alien races. Today, he saw more curiosity than fear, which was progress. Friends and fellow beings, Jake began, 6 months ago, I accidentally caused a panic by showing you an image of what humans consider a gentle pet. Today, I want to share a discovery that will change how the galaxy thinks about Earth and humanity. The audience was completely silent. Jake had learned that when he promised new information about Earth, every alien in the galaxy listened carefully. I have spent months studying your reactions to Earth's wildlife, Jake continued. I have learned something amazing about the galaxy, and something even more amazing about my own planet. Jake activated the holographic display. Instead of showing Earth animals, it showed a map of the galaxy with hundreds of different worlds marked in different colors. Most planets in the galaxy have one or two apex predators, Jake said. These predators eliminate all competition and become the dominant species. This is normal. This is how evolution works on almost every world. The display zoomed in on several alien worlds, showing their simple food chains. Each planet had a few plant-eating species and one major predator that controlled the entire ecosystem. But Earth is different, Jake said. The display switched to show Earth's complex web of predator-prey relationships. Earth has hundreds of apex predators, all living in the same areas, all competing for the same resources. The aliens in the audience made sounds of amazement. The complexity of Earth's ecosystem was unlike anything they had ever seen. Bears, wolves, big cats, sharks, eagles, snakes, and dozens of other predator species all share the same planet, Jake said. By galactic standards, this should be impossible. These species should have eliminated each other millions of years ago. Dr. Nelix raised one of her arms. Mr. Morrison, how does Earth support so many competing predators? That's the key question, Jake said with a smile. Earth doesn't just support these predators. Earth requires them. Each predator fills a different role in the ecosystem. Remove any one of them, and the entire system collapses. Jake showed images of different Earth environments: forests, oceans, grasslands, and mountains. Each environment contained multiple predator species working together to maintain balance. Wolves control deer populations, which protects forests. Sharks control fish populations, which protects coral reefs. Eagles control rodent populations, which protects crops. Every predator is necessary. The audience was beginning to understand something remarkable. Earth was not a planet where predators happened to coexist. Earth was a planet where predators had to coexist in order for life to survive. And this brings me to humans, Jake said. The display showed early human history, primitive tools, cave paintings, and small communities. Humans evolved in the middle of this complex predator system. We were not the strongest, fastest, or most dangerous species on our planet. We were just another animal trying to survive. Jake showed how humans had developed intelligence, cooperation, and tool use to compete with much stronger predators. But here's what makes humans unique, Jake said. Instead of trying to eliminate our competition, we learned to work with it. We figured out that the complex predator system was what made Earth so rich and diverse. The aliens were listening intently. This was a completely different way of thinking about survival and evolution. Humans became successful not by destroying Earth's dangerous ecosystem, but by becoming part of it, Jake continued. We learned to read animal behavior, to predict seasonal patterns, to work with natural systems instead of against them. Jake showed images of modern human cities with parks, gardens, and wildlife corridors. Even today, when humans build cities, we include spaces for other species. We design our communities to coexist with the animals around us. A Thraxian delegate stood up. Mr. Morrison, are you saying that humans are successful because of Earth's dangers, not despite them? Exactly, Jake said. Earth's complex ecosystem forced humans to become adaptable, intelligent, and cooperative. We had to learn to solve problems quickly and work together effectively, or we would not survive. The implications were staggering. The aliens had always assumed that Earth's dangers were obstacles that humans had overcome. Now they were learning that Earth's dangers were the reason humans had become so capable. This explains why humans are so good at handling crises, Jake continued. On most worlds, when a problem arises, there's usually one simple solution. On Earth, every problem has multiple variables and requires complex thinking. Jake showed examples of human problem solving: medicine, engineering, space travel, and diplomacy. All of these fields required the kind of complex thinking that humans had developed while learning to coexist with dangerous predators. Humans don't just survive difficult situations, Jake said. We thrive in them. Because on Earth, every day, is a difficult situation that requires intelligence, cooperation, and respect for the forces around us. Professor Kickstall stood up slowly. Mr. Morrison, if this is true, what does it mean for the galaxy? What can other species learn from humans? Jake had been hoping someone would ask this question. It means that diversity and cooperation are stronger than domination and elimination. It means that complex problems require complex solutions. It means that intelligence is more powerful than force. The audience was quiet, thinking about these ideas. For most galactic species, the concept of cooperation with dangerous competitors was completely foreign. But most importantly, Jake continued, it means that the galaxy has been asking the wrong question about humans. You've been asking, how did humans survive Earth's dangers? You should be asking, what can we learn from a species that turned survival into an art form? Dean Vorthak's crystalline form began to glow brighter. Mr. Morrison, you are suggesting that human methods could help other species solve problems more effectively? I'm suggesting that human experience with complex systems could be valuable to the entire galaxy, Jake said. Humans have spent millions of years learning to balance competing interests, manage scarce resources, and find creative solutions to impossible problems. The Grand Assembly erupted in discussion. Delegates from different worlds began talking excitedly about the possibilities. Some were still afraid, but many were beginning to see humans as potential partners rather than threats. Jake waited for the noise to die down before continuing. There's one more thing you should know, he said. I've been showing you Earth's gentle animals and explaining our peaceful coexistence with nature. But I haven't told you about the animals that humans actually fear. The auditorium became completely silent. Every alien in the room leaned forward. The animals I've shown you. The snakes, cats, dogs, and bears. These are the creatures we consider manageable, Jake said with a small smile. Earth also has animals that challenge even human ingenuity. Jake could see the fear returning to many faces in the audience. He realized that he had probably said too much. But Jake added quickly, that's a lesson for another day. Today, I want you to remember that humans are not monsters from a death world. We are problem solvers from a complex world. We are partners who have learned that cooperation and intelligence can overcome any challenge. As Jake left the stage, he could hear the excited discussions continuing throughout the auditorium. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humans were not just survivors. They were teachers who could help other species learn to thrive in an increasingly complex universe. Jake also knew that he had planted a seed of curiosity about Earth's truly dangerous animals. Someday, the galaxy would ask about the creatures that even humans approached with extreme caution. When that day came, Jake would have to explain tigers, crocodiles, venomous spiders, and the other predators that humans had never quite learned to domesticate. He would have to describe the animals that still made humans build walls, carry weapons, and stay far away. But for now, Jake was content knowing that he had helped the galaxy see humans as intelligent partners rather than dangerous primitives. He had shown that Earth was not a world of monsters, but a world that had taught its inhabitants the most valuable lesson in the universe, that intelligence, cooperation, and respect for nature were the keys to not just surviving, but thriving. The galaxy was finally beginning to understand why humans were truly special. And Jake Morrison, the exchange student who had accidentally caused a panic with a hologram of his sister's pet snake, had